Welcome to this week's episode of Aiding Your Game. Today we're going to be talking about prep work that a DM or GM puts in prior to a game. What's too much, what's too little, and what's right for you. Before we jump into it, make sure to subscribe. Hit that bell if you want to get our updates every time we post a new video. Follow and share to help us grow. Let's jump into the session. As a GM, one of the crucial elements to bring to your tabletop game is preparation for your game night. So, what's the right amount of preparation for you? Is it too much or too little? And what do those look like? We'll go from both ends of the spectrum and talk about each and then help you decide where on that spectrum you fall in. Let's start with too much prep. What does it mean when you have too much prep? Well, the first thing is it's time away from everything else. The more time you spend prepping for a session is less time you have for everything else. If you have an unlimited amount of time, that's great. You can spend as much time as you want prepping for the session. However, that can lead to disappointment in a lot of the items that you've spent valuable time preparing don't even get explored. For instance, if you spend a wealth of time working on a monster with a great background or an environment with some fantastic details, but the party doesn't even go through that area or in one round of combat knocks that villain out, then it can be frustrating in that all that time you spent in preparation has kind of gone to waste. With repeated elements of this, it can quickly lead to DM burnout, which ultimately takes away from the GM having a fun time at the table. Spending too much time in preparation can be a detriment to the GM, as well as not lead to the expectations and enjoyment at the table for everyone who plays. On the opposite side of that spectrum is too little time doing any prep. While this can be great for people who don't have a lot of free time with family and work and other commitments in their life, and not having any allotment of time to spend with some simple preparation, this can have detrimental effects of your story in that it could lack complete cohesiveness. One week you can be working on the coast of a fantastic pirate campaign and the next delving into dungeons deep in the mountains. While this could work great for a serial type of adventuring sessions, if your players or you are looking for a good cohesive overarching storyline, not having enough prep doesn't tie the pieces together to weave that tale. Additionally, this can leave you constantly chasing. If on the fly you're having to give out treasures or come up with random adventures or even random encounters, keeping track of some of those parts and pieces and having explanations for what they do and why they're there can be more challenging than just spending some time doing some early prep work. By having to chase down details, you're going to spend more post-time work filling in the blanks and answering questions that arise in the session than had you spent the same amount of time in prep work working on those details. Additionally, some of those details could just get lost in the shuffle. If you're describing your world and giving a fantastic improv speech for the elements that they're facing and you cut to a break and everybody gets a moment to come out of the game, you jump back into the game, you may forget the elements that the party was just going through. While occasionally this happens even with prep work, if it's a repeated offense, your players are going to notice and pick up and call you out on it. And depending on the party that you're playing with, they may be very forgiving on this, but it will affect the game. So, what's the best way to combat either end of the spectrum? Well, the first thing is know your own limitations. If you have a set amount of time that you can use in preparation or chasing of the details afterwards, then you'll know the parameters that you have to be able to spend in preparation or follow-up from your sessions. Don't overcommit and don't start taking away time to lead to burnout. Know what your limitations are and stick to them. Once you know what your limitations are, make sure to communicate those with your players. If they're looking for further and further details and more information, don't hesitate to just simply say, I don't have the time to be able to do more, but we'll work on it or get to it. Ultimately, these are some things that you can pass out to your players to do on their free time. After all, it is a shared story. Some of the prep and research work can be done at a table level with you having support of your players doing some of the legwork. And right in line with that, set realistic expectations at your table. In the past 5 months, I've done a lot of research to see some of the dynamics and get some of the information on current tabletop systems, especially having everything moving more and more virtual. I'm a data type person, so digging in and seeing some of the information that is being shared on different social media platforms is fantastic for me. By starting out with your session 0 or previously to a session 0, and then continuing to call out what those expectations are on your limitations, your abilities, your time allowance, and what the expectations of your players are to receive from the game is going to help you have a better opportunity to utilize prep time, improv time, and follow-up time to make sure that everybody's getting their wants and needs met within a reasonable amount of time, or that you're not spending time spinning your wheels with a group who basically you can't meet their expectations or they can't meet yours. Here are 4 items I think you need to prep for every session. Number 1 is write down where is the party. This is great to keep your environments the same and make sure that you're tracking important features or locations that you've given to the party previously, just to help with immersion and continuance of the game world you're exposing them to. This is great for the players. The second thing is write down what's the session's goal. By setting some type of a goal, you're able to manage the pacing and meet the expectation that there is some type of progression and some type of achievement that is achieved each game session. Make sure to write it down. The next thing is write down what's the campaign goal. Making sure your story goals and the story framework you're building follows the end goal of your campaign is great. Unless you're doing a serial style campaign. We'll talk about that in a different video. Finally, make sure you write down, are there any elements from previous sessions that you need to review or go back over, or was there anything that you left that you need to just tie up the loose ends? This is going to help you make sure that you don't have breadcrumbs left over too long. DMing isn't for everybody. It definitely is very rewarding and allows you to help shape and mold a palette that other people can paint a fantastic story of their characters on, and you can have an integral part of that storytelling process. But it isn't for everyone because the commitment, the time allowance is required, and the ability to have open communication with the players and meet realistic expectations for everyone involved can be very challenging. In a lot of my research, I found that the average game today lasts 3 months. 3 months is basically a quarter of the year and is a decent amount of time. However, with more and more people playing, the opportunity to spend those 3 months telling a cohesive, good story that takes characters from that initial awkward meeting starting point of the players to a fantastic team of heroes for the realms of Dungeons and Dragons can be very challenging. Now, if you're up to the task and you can find where on this spectrum of too little or too much prep, then you're on the way to helping craft fantastic stories that your players are going to enjoy, your communities are going to support and congratulate you on, and you'll find rewards of your own in crafting the palette and the canvas that those stories are going to be designed and built on. This type of impact for the gaming community is like nothing else. So if you're up to the task and ready to start DMing, or maybe you have been DMing, possibly facing burnout or just questioning whether or not you are doing a good job for yourself, stop and look at a spectrum of preparation and outcome. Is the preparation you're committing to matching the outcome that you and your players are receiving from the games? Find a balance between those two. If you're spending too much prep time and not getting enough enjoyment, it's time to rework those scales. Feel free in the comments below to let me know about how much time you spend in prep and in follow-up to your games. I'd love to hear from you. As I said, I'm kind of a data type of person, so getting as much information from other people is super important to me. Just to bring you into the loop, I spend on average about 2 hours a week in preparation for one game session, and then about 1 hour in follow-up from each session. Now, I run 3 campaigns a week, so it does have a lot of time in both prep and follow-up. Sometimes that can be a little challenging to make sure that I've got good separation and making sure that I separate those campaigns out so that I don't cross the tracks and give out incorrect information. So even a little bit more time possibly in organization and making sure that all of my tools are not only organized but separated by game night. I find this works really well for my schedule and the amount of time that I can easily commit to in preparation of each of the games to balance my enjoyment for what I like to do with world building and world lore, NPC creation, location research, and coming up with fantastic descriptions. Really fits my playstyle as a GM, and from the feedback I've gotten from my players, everything seems to work out really well with how much information they're given, how vivid and realistic the world is for their immersion, and how much opportunity they have to impact and play in their character story within the overarching campaign. Again, that communication is key. Don't hesitate every couple of sessions just to grab everybody's attention and pull some of that feedback. Are they getting the same enjoyment of the game as you are? And if not, what commitments do they need to do to help balance their scales as well, which could be on their own prep work, making sure they've got their characters ready to go and pre-planning some of their actions. Maybe it's time in the game. Combat needs to move faster. They need to roll their hit and damage dice at the same time. Maybe it's more RP so that they get on a more cohesive team level. There's nothing worse than being part of the A-team and not being present. Again, avoiding many of our pitfalls goes right back to communication. You're going to hear me harp on that a lot in all of my videos. And it's only because I believe that communication can solve 90% of the problems we in the gaming community face. Again, don't hesitate to leave a comment below. Let me know about how much time you spend in preparation and maybe even some of the items you do to prepare for your games or follow up. Taking notes, recording, maybe you stream and re-listen to them later. I'd love to hear some of your information, what you find helpful and what you find is a detriment to your preparation of the game. I know on social media you'll see all kinds of posts who say you don't need any preparation at all and you should only improv. Others who say if you don't spend 15 hours a week prepping for a 1-hour session, you're doing it wrong. Believe me, you're not doing it wrong. These videos are just designed to help find ways for you to manage it and get the most enjoyment out of the community. That's it for this week's video. Join me next week when we talk about the variance between serials versus series in your campaign. Really determining what type of campaign you want and are willing to run, and what type of campaign your players are wanting to play in. Both have pros and cons. We're going to cover them each. Until then, make sure you let us know. Where will your adventures take you? Thank you for watching the video. We hope you enjoyed. Here's an additional video that we feel you may like. And be sure to hit the subscribe button as we continue to grow and develop. Our first milestone of 25 subscribers is going to lead to 5 of those subscribers drawn at random to receive a free t-shirt. Make sure to share and help us grow. Thank you, and be sure to comment below. Where will your adventures take you?